Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, you know it's that time of the calendar because we are continuing on with our football previews, and now we have moved over to the NFL ranks as we just started with the ACC. So if you're a college football fan, go and check that out. But this is for the professionals, and we got preseason games starting, so we're recording on Thursday. We got preseason underway. We had the Hall of Fame game that got canceled, but I mean, it's right around the corner, man. Are you ready for it?
I don't know. I was looking at the schedule today and I was like, holy smokes, there's football on Saturday. Like, this is crazy. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of balls to the wall all the time throughout the entire offseason, just like scooping up whatever pieces of info you can, full degenerate stuff. But now that it's here, I found myself like almost like disassociated a little bit from some of the reports coming out of camp because I'm like, I was reading this 3.5 months ago. Like, I don't know what to believe. We're in the part of the year, Brad, where everybody looks amazing. And so it's let's just roll the balls out and play, please.
We're getting to that point. And so what we're starting with today is the AFC West division, the home of the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. And so if you're not familiar, if you're just tuning in with us for the first time, what we're going to do, this is just football breakdowns. We're going through each team. We're giving a little nugget, giving our opinions, what we think we're going to see this season. We're going to have a later betting episode where we go through win totals, where we dive into some of the futures. We want to dive into any player props. I know we didn't hit that too hard last year. This year is going to be a little bit different for me, though. I think I'm going to dip my toe back in there. But AFC West in general, just before we get into the teams, this is a division that's been dominated by the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, in this Mahomes and Andy Reid era. We'll talk about the head coaches here, but, they've made hires to try to compete with the Chiefs, right? Can somebody take them down? That's what kind of we were all waiting for, I guess, if you're not a Chiefs fan, to see if anybody can compete with this team.
And this is pretty much all of their second or third times making hires to try to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. So not to poo-poo some of these like new faces, Jim Harbaugh, we're excited to have you back in the NFL. But I am just pointing out that, well, Brandon Staley was supposed to be able to stop it too, and Josh McDaniels was going to get the Raiders rolling. Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. Like, we're not very far removed from a lot of these dumpster fires here. Brad, this is a really weird division because it feels like a couple teams are in transition phases, but they might not be like fully aware. Like, it feels like Vegas is just kind of stringing this thing along, going, well, if we pick top three, that'd be fantastic, but we're going to try to make the playoffs, and that's a tough spot to be in.
Absolutely. And so let's start with the defending champion, Kansas City Chiefs, third Super Bowl for Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid continues to climb up the all-time ranks. I think it's hard not to consider him the second best of all time now. I mean, Belichick, I think, still firmly at the top. But depending on how long Reid wants to do this thing with Mahomes, there's a chance that, I don't want to say he can catch Belichick. He's got to do three more. But my goodness, I mean, who's stopping this guy when it matters? I mean, he had the toughest road last season, right? Because they went 11-6, was enough to win this division, but people were counting them out. He had to go 3 road games, and yet it didn't matter in the playoffs. Looking ahead to this season, or looking at this season, I think the biggest thing for the Chiefs, how does this receiving core look? Because Travis Kelce put the cape on in the playoffs. Travis Kelce was able to put the cape on when it mattered. But throughout the regular season, somebody's going to have to step up. And they were able to do that last year with the running game. They were able to do that with the strength of their defense. Can history repeat itself? Can they do that back-to-back seasons? Or is this receiving core going to be improved? That's what I'm paying attention to.
Yeah, and obviously we know the Rashee Rice drama from the offseason. So, like, you're kind of holding your breath on that if you're Kansas City. Like, what exactly is going to come out of all of this? When is it going to hit? They invest early, obviously, with Xavier Worthy. And I think that's a rightful concern. I'll just look at the other side of the football. Just with the losing of L'Jarius Sneed, or the moving on from L'Jarius Sneed, and let's see kind of how that looks in that secondary, because it was straps all year last year. Nobody was open ever, like with him and Trent McDuffie and these guys. He's only a 27-year-old player. Let's see if Kansas City was correct in their assessment that, hey, we can replace this guy, for a third of the cost, and maybe L'Jarius Sneed is going to continue to be great, and Kansas City can also replace him. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But for a team that was carried by its defense for the most part last year, losing probably your second biggest contributor on that side of the football outside of Chris Jones. It's going to be a tough thing to replace, but it's Spags, baby. And so, like, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's just so nice, I'm sure, for Andy Reid to just sit there and know this guy's going to be my defensive coordinator. Like, I handle the offense. He handles the defense. At this point in time, he's not looking for a head coaching job. Like, he wants to be the defensive coordinator, and that's a blessing for a head coach. You don't have to worry about upward mobility like McVay, like Shanahan staffs, where, these guys are constantly getting poached. And so that's one of the reasons why I think there's success here for the Kansas City Chiefs as well. But, I mean, you mentioned Jerry Sneed. How about Willie Gay leaving? That's an underrated one, because that linebacking core with him and Drew Tranquil, they could cover and they could stop the run. You take him out of there, that's something I want to keep an eye on. But again, this is the Chiefs. You have Patrick Mahomes. It's hard to go against and imagine that they're not going to be able to be improved. They're not going to be able to at least be there in the playoffs, right? Like, missing the playoffs would be absurd. Like, we can't count them out. But you add Hollywood Brown, you get Hardman back, yes. You add Irv Smith, and then, you just look at some of the people they pick up. Chris Jones gets re-signed, so he's not worried about anything contract related. Like, this is just a machine that keeps rolling.
Yeah, and I think Kansas City is going to have the most fun kick returns this year with the new rules. I'm excited to see what Andy and those guys can cook up. We make a lot of fun of Kadarius Toney, and so does everybody else in the country. But it almost feels like this thing was designed for him, right? It's make one guy miss and you're gone, and he can do that with the best of them. I'm very last year we went in a little bearish on Kansas City, and obviously we're proved wrong, but we weren't the only ones who were like, maybe this team is going to take a step back, and we had some concerns, and those concerns they came true during the regular season, and it just didn't matter. This year, I feel like the rest of the AFC at the top kind of took a step backwards, and Kansas City at least stayed the same as far as like overall talent. You see Stephon Diggs leave Buffalo. We watched them pants Baltimore last year in the AFC Championship game on the road. Like, they're in a good spot.
Let's move over to the Raiders. One of those teams I think that you mentioned as being in this, maybe they should be in a transitional phase, but they don't really know it, right? Like, they go out and they sign Gardner Minshew. Personally for me, I don't think the quarterback class is very good in the NFL draft in 2025. Like, I know Shedeur Sanders is a hot name. I know we talk about, Quinn Ewers, but, if that was the case, he would have left a while ago. Carson Beck, I mean, is anybody getting really excited about that? Like, he's probably your number one pick, but, we'll see. So I think if you're the Raiders, you look at it, okay, we finally started winning under Antonio Pierce, and we decided to give him the job, and I think it was smart at the time for them to do that. Like, you just want to keep the momentum going and the good vibes, because God knows the Raiders have not been able to do that. But is there going to be some regression? Are they going to be able to out-scheme people? Like, is this coaching staff well-versed enough where they can compete in this division with Andy Reid, with now Jim Harbaugh, and then Sean Payton? I know, and you'll probably get into it a little bit, but, winning 8 games with that roster last year, my goodness. So that's the concern that I have with the Raiders. But you still have Devontae Adams. You sign Christian Wilkins, and you finally have somebody that Max Crosby doesn't have to be triple teamed with, because he's going to eat up the interior. So there are some pieces here. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is Antonio Pierce's almost Dan Campbell, like year 2. Like, we got the culture established for the most part last year. Like, he come out right away and punch the Chargers in the face, right? And it was like, wow, this Antonio Pierce thing might work out. Aiden O'Connell might be the 32nd best starting quarterback in the NFL, but he was winning football games. They lose Josh Jacobs. They replace him with Zamir White. I think that's fine. Like, I don't think like the fantasy football community is extremely high on Zamir White. I think that the actual NFL world probably values him lower. I think bringing in a guy like Dylan Laub and Amir Abdullah and these guys that can kind of spell him for stretches, let's see what this offense looks like. But we've talked about it a little bit post-draft. What I'm most interested in with Vegas is seeing this NBA roster that they're going to trot out as pass catchers, right? I mean, it's Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers. He's 6'4", 6'5" across the board. And we've seen Gardner Minshew play some really fun football with guys that have that body type and kind of these skill sets. I think that Vegas is, if we always do NBA League Pass teams, and if you're a season Sunday ticket holder, Vegas might be must-see TV.
especially because I don't know how good this defense is going to be.
Yep.
Yeah, but, for their success on the field, it's going to come down to the offensive line. And they tried to address that, right? Andres Pete, he was good with the Saints for a while. He's definitely on the back half of his career. I don't, at least he's a swing guy. So if somebody goes down, he can be plug and play. They re-signed Andre James, their center. I think that was a good move. Cody Whitehair, they brought in another guy who's on the back nine of his career. But, you still got Colton Miller there. There should be at least some pieces that you can protect Gardner Minshew and find those NBA guys down the field. At least that's their idea. So I'm curious to know if that's going to work. But this needs to be a team that's built through the trenches. Like, they have to be able to stop the pass rusher, and they have to get after the quarterback, right? Mahomes and Justin Herbert going forward. So I thought getting Christian Wilkins, that was a huge deal for this Raiders team.
Yeah. What do you think the ceiling is, best case scenario season for the Vegas Raiders?
Oh man, I mean, I don't know necessarily the strength of schedule off the top of my head. I expect the Chargers to take a step forward. I think the Broncos should be better. So I mean, honestly, 5-6 wins to be on. I mean, unless Gardner Minshew is unbelievable, but I just don't see a lot of wins here. I think the AFC is deep. I think it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, we'll get into that more in our betting episode. Kind of that number is very interesting, Brad. Right at 5 or 6.
All right, let's talk about the Broncos. We mentioned them a couple times. So Sean Payton is now in his second season. It didn't go good at first. I mean, they were getting embarrassed by teams. Russell Wilson and him was just a marriage that was a shotgun wedding in Las Vegas, and you get sober and you come back and you're like, oh God, I hate this person. And that's really what it felt like. So they moved on from Wilson. Just a disaster of a trade. And if you look at all the compensation that was given up by the Broncos, they get Jared Stidham in. Okay, guy who can run the offense. Who do they draft? Bo Nix, a guy who can run the offense. I'm not sure who it's going to be. I mean, there's differing reports coming out of camp suggesting that Stidham looks good. Oh, Bo Nix eventually will take this. You don't take a guy where you took Bo Nix and not give him some run, I think, his rookie year, especially with his age. So that's something to monitor here. But I know you're going to have something to say about Sean Payton. I still believe in the offense. I still believe in the guru. And again, winning 8 games after they got their ass kicked last year early in the season, and be able to keep this roster and this team believing in winning football games in the National Football League is pretty impressive to me.
Well, that can be impressive, and you can refrain from using the word guru when referring to Sean Payton. I mean, we're talking about the third best coach in division here, and I'm not wrong. We know Andy Reid has won. We've seen Jim Harbaugh have incredible success at the NFL level. So to me, Sean Payton can be an above-average coach. He's better than Mike McCarthy, but I think that they have similar kind of just vibes about them. I think that Sean Payton is a tough guy to play for, it seems. But I am interested this year. I think Greg Dulcich is going to be actually a factor in the pass game here as out of the tight end position. I think that Javonte Williams is going to actually maybe take a step forward. A couple months ago, we were hearing Javonte Williams might not even make the roster. This guy looks bad. And now we're hearing he's tearing up camp. I think that we've seen Sean Payton utilize pass-catching running backs a ton. We'll see who fills that role, if it is going to be Javonte and he plays all 3 downs, or if Jaleel McLaughlin kind of continues to ascend, or whatever homer pick Sean Payton has that he's signed. That's another thing. The guy holds on to wild players. The receiving corps stinks, and we know that. I think ideally you're looking for Marvin Mims maybe to take a step forward, somebody like that, if Troy Franklin can flash, just somebody young that you've brought in. I think Courtland Sutton's fine. We know who he is as a player. He's not going to be here when Bo Nix is ready to compete, right? And you mentioned Bo Nix is going to play this year. Absolutely. I don't know if it'll be right away. I think that some of the Sean Payton comments on Bo Nix would lead you to believe that he's going to start. I mean, he just compared him to Drew Brees and his ability to evade sacks. And that's a pretty high compliment from a guy who's been around a lot of really good quarterbacks, especially for a rookie. The defense was all right after it was really bad, right? And that was the interesting part here, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, you lose one of the best safeties in the entire NFL, right? And you kind of are trying to backfill some spots, but it's not a very attractive group of defensive players. I don't think they're going to score a ton of points, even if they're being run by an offensive guru.
The defense to me was the most shocking thing because they're led by Vance Joseph. And I just thought, I mean, let's be honest, he was a disaster of a head coach when he was here with the Broncos. And then he goes to the Arizona Cardinals as a defensive coordinator under Cliff Kingsbury. Oh, boy, that was just not a good situation there. Now, was it because of Kingsbury and was his defense put in adverse situations? Yeah, you could make that argument. You could take a look at that and say that's a reason. And when you have Payton here and the offense runs a little bit differently and maybe more in coordination with the defense, okay, is that a reason why they took a step? John Franklin Myers they brought in, the edge rusher. Pretty good player. I'm curious to see what he does here with a little bit more snaps. You know, it can go one of two ways, right? Like the more you're exposed on the field, you know, the more reps you get, the less productive you can be. Or because you have more reps, you can put up monster numbers. So that's something to keep an eye on. Malcolm Roach, you want to talk about a guy, the Sean Payton guy, bring him over, right? Yeah. Come from the Saints. Levi Wallace, they signed at cornerback. You know, not necessarily anybody you're going to write home about at this point in his career, but another veteran guy, another guy who's seen a lot of things, can sit in this secondary that Vance Joseph is running and be on the other side of Pat Surtain, right? So ultimately what I'm looking at here for the Broncos too, moving on from Jerry Jeudy, is that an addition by subtraction? Because holy smokes, what a disaster it was during his tenure here. I mean, just calling everybody out, just not ever flashing. Maybe one time and he would drop the ball. You know, so trading him to the Browns, kind of getting rid of him, and then bringing in Josh Reynolds, who's a professional, like a pro.
He's a freaking serpent, man.
And that's interesting to me. You got a legit guy on the inside. Somebody can play outside. And then, like you said, too, Marvin Mims, is this going to be his flash year? It didn't seem like Payton trusted him, but, you know, you drafted him for a reason. He's got speed. Can this be the year he pops?
Yeah, that's going to be huge. This team is lower on the league pass rankings, I think, for me. I'm not a Bo Nix believer. We'll see what happens. I think he is going to benefit from an absurdly low, like, average depth of throw or a pass attempt, right? I don't think he's going to be airing this thing out. So his completion percentage might be really good, but I'm going to caution everybody. We might have a Mac Jones rookie season situation on our hands, and I'm excited for the discourse in the offseason.
Now, here's who could be a league pass team. The Los Angeles Chargers, and mainly, you know, they bring in Jim Harbaugh. Their head coach is a bigger star than the quarterback, Justin Herbert. And the ceiling now that's been placed on this team is, I don't even know if we can measure it. Going from Brandon Staley, who is a slap, to Jim Harbaugh, he wins everywhere he's been. You know, and the guy is a football coach and a great one at that. And so you bring him in. I know year one, it's always difficult for a turnaround. My God, is anybody going to doubt him, though? There are players on this roster. It's not like he is taking over the Arizona Cardinals from a couple seasons ago. Like, they are maxed out in the salary cap with stars. The cupboard is not bare. So what can he do immediately when they come in? Now, I'm concerned that Justin Herbert, already in a walking boot, plantar fasciitis, you know, this is something that I don't want to say is hindered him or is lingered, but he's banged up. And, you know, everybody in the National Football League is, but that's something to monitor. But, man, Tyson, the sky is the limit for him taking over here.
Well, first of all, the salary cap is maxed out because Tom Telesco sucks. And the Vegas Raiders saw that and then said, that's our guy now. And they went out and got him as general manager. We probably should have spent a second talking about that because he talked about slaps earlier, and it was an organization full of them just a year ago. So I think that the Jim Harbaugh switch is going to be, like, really good. I don't know about immediately, right? I mean, they're going to play a completely different style of football than we're used to out of this Los Angeles Chargers team. Jim Harbaugh wants to run the football. He wants to play defense. They go out and get Joe Alt at the 5th pick. Malik Neighbors is tearing up camp right now. We're getting 10 Twitter videos a day of how good he looked. Jim Harbaugh doesn't care at all, right? That's a guy who went one pick afterwards. He said, I want that offensive tackle. Now we got a bookend on both sides with him and Rashawn Slater. Let's rock. Let's go play ball. I'm a little bit worried that you're going to lean heavy on Gus Edwards, who hasn't really made it through an entire season, right? We see him banged up all the time. J.K. Dobbins, we haven't seen hardly 2 straight games out of this guy, but both of those dudes, if they play, are going to be good, and they're going to be fine. Josh Palmer at wide receiver, I think, is a Jim Harbaugh player. We'll see what happens with QJ, Quentin Johnson. I don't know if he's even going to make the team. It's tough. Everything that we're seeing and hearing out of camp is it looks tough right now for Quentin Johnson, but One thing I can't ignore on a Jim Harbaugh team, again, I know I mentioned the kickoff rules earlier, their special teams is going to be awesome. And this is a Chargers team that hasn't had a good special teams unit in the last couple of seasons, right? We've seen them lose games because of poor special teams. I'm excited for the Los Angeles Chargers, and we didn't even get to talk about, some all pros on defense.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the players they lost, right? And you'll see this with the regime change. Like Telesco's out and Brandon Staley's out. I mean, you go to the departures tab, it's a ton of people, right? They traded away Keenan Allen. Mike Williams departs in free agency. Gerald Everett no longer there. Nick Van Nett gone. And you just kind of go through the list and you're like, oh, yeah, see ya. Kenneth Murray they moved on from, which I think was surprising to a lot of people. But, man, besides 1 year, it's hasn't been great. Hasn't been great for old Kenneth Murray. But, like you said, Austin Eckler no longer there. That's another, I guess, regime casualty, I'll call it. We have cap casualties and regime casualties. I think that's the case here for Eckler. So they want to go a little bit more smash mouth. All right, Dobbins and Edwards, go 1-2 punch. DJ Chark's an interesting one because, he had a couple seasons and then he hasn't really surfaced again. Like, what's his role going to be? Is he going to be the Mike Williams type of role, go downfield, go and get it? That's something to keep an eye on. Hayden Hurst, bringing over the tight end here, a guy who can block, a guy who can pass catch. That talk about a Jim Harbaugh guy, that's exactly what he is. Man, Bradley Bozeman, just keep building on the interior. They get him in here. That's a guy from the Ravens in the past. So it's a mauling type of setup, and that's exactly what you would expect out of Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. What do you think, the expectation versus reality here is for the Los Angeles Chargers? Because it does feel to me like it's pretty inflated on what we think this team can accomplish versus when you look at the roster and the way the last couple seasons have been here for LA.
I think they're going to underperform compared to the inflated expectations, right? I think when everybody sees, Harbaugh is in, they finally have a real coach. What can Herbert do? They're going to win this division. They're going to contend for the Super Bowl. That's what people are saying right now. And with the track record of Harbaugh, it's hard to argue with that, right? He's a proven winner everywhere he's gone. But again, these things take time. You have to rebuild your roster. Yes, there are things in place here, but outside of the top guys, it's a top heavy group. If Joey Bosa gets hurt, he probably will, because that's just what happens. Who's getting after the passer? I mean, they brought in Bud Dupree, but how many times are we going to listen to that story? So I think on the surface they're going to underachieve, but I think it's going to look much better. They're going to look competent. They're going to be in games. They're not going to give away situations and lose themselves any contests.
And I don't think wins is going to be a fair way to judge the progress of this team. I think we're going to know based on the attitude in weeks 9, 10, 11, 12 if Harbaugh's been able to put his footprint on this team.
So let's put a bow on the AFC West here. And again, we're not going to give a division winner. That'll be later, if there's injuries, things like that, something that pops up. So, but just where do you see this division right now? I mean, it seems like we're both, we can say it, Kansas City, they're probably going to win another division. That's just where it feels like for me. But I guess let's just go through kind of quick thoughts, quick hitters, best case for stuff, surprises, anything that you are thinking right off the top of your head.
Well, yeah, Kansas City's the class of the division here, class of the conference. Not a surprise. I think that the Broncos are going to win 7, 8 games again, and they're just stuck here. That's what I think is going to happen for the next 9 years of the Sean Payton contract. I'm interested in the Raiders quite a bit, actually. That's pretty intriguing to me. I can see them being a pretty bad football team this year, but I think they're going to be fun, and I think they're going to be physical. And then the Chargers are one of the more intriguing teams in all of the NFL right now. I think everybody's kind of waiting with bated breath to see what this thing looks like. But again, I think you're going to have essentially 3 teams towards the bottom of the conference and maybe the Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat with you. I think the Chargers, and you talk about league pass team, I want to see how fast this thing can get off the ground, because let's just put it this way. If they are able to hit their ceiling, this roster can compete. But make no bones about it.
They made the playoffs, yeah.
For sure. And then anything can happen in the playoffs when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert. You got to win. He's got to win. I know everybody loves him. Let's start seeing some wins here. And, maybe that comes with Harbaugh, because, again, he doesn't have Brandon Staley. As for the Broncos, I tend to agree with you on that. I want them to overachieve because I want you to come on here and call him and Sean Payton a guru. Like, I want you to eat those words.
Never.
But we'll get to that point maybe eventually. But I'm curious to see how Bo Nix looks. Like, that's one thing. When he's on the field, I want to see how that looks. Raiders, is it going to be a disaster? I mean, because maybe if we had this draft class last year and they brought in Gardner Minshew, we'd all be sitting here like, what are they doing? That's stupid. But they want to build upon this.
Who do you think starts more games between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew?
I think Minshew starts every one.
I think they're both going to play.
You do? I don't think Aiden O'Connell plays at all. I think they're like ready to move off of him. I mean, or else they would have started him. They wouldn't have brought in Gardner Minshew.
I think that they're both going to play. I would say they're going to, like, Gardner Minshew probably wins the job out of camp. I think they're going to lose a couple games. They're going to switch it to Aiden O'Connell. They're going to lose a couple games, and they're going to go back and forth. I really think they're both going to play. All the language from Antonio Pierce has been like Aiden O'Connell is taking the first rep of camp. Aiden O'Connell is going to start the first preseason game. I think they're trying to show him some sort of respect because of kind of the situation he was put in last year and the way that he came in and like won games, not by like on his own accord, but like the team ended up winning. So I think they're trying to repay him a little bit. And then the other part, Brad, Gardner Minshew might just be the best bridge quarterback in the NFL, and he might win them a game or two that you don't want to win. And so maybe Aiden O'Connell's playing Kansas City in December.
That would be certainly interesting. I think Minshew is going to hold this job. I get what you're saying with Pierce, and he's a guy who played in the NFL, and so he kind of knows, you can rally around the guy. But are we really sitting here looking at Aiden O'Connell like, man, if he doesn't start, that locker room is going to implode?
He's no good, but I do think they're going to let him get some burn.
Well, I'm intrigued. I want to see, we both like Antonio Pierce. We thought he did a good job as the interim. Clearly the organization agreed, but, we'll have to keep an eye on that as that progresses. But that's going to do it for our AFC East preview. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button on the way out. If you're listening in podcast form, give us a 5-star if you haven't already. And again, you want to stay subscribed. You want to stay connected with us because we have a lot of content coming out as we get into this football season. Previews are starting now. We'll keep going into that. And then we got week 0 in college football, and then we're rolling right into the NFL season.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And yeah, just follow us along this because we're pushing them out every we're going to do 2 essentially a week in the NFL, 1 conference a week, NCAA. So this is going to be a lot of football content coming out.
Absolutely. So, all right, that'll do it for this one. We have the NFC West coming out next. We'll talk to you guys then. Peace.